All right, well, thanks everybody for tuning in. It's an exciting day. I always talk about this being like Christmas. It truly is. And this year, with everything we were doing for COVID. But thanks for everybody for joining in. I just want to get through a few things right away, give some thank yous to everybody that made it possible. Certainly this year has been an odd one. It seems like this recruiting cycle has gone on for literally forever because obviously didn't have spring practices and things of that nature. So this recruitment has been sped up a lot for us. So with COVID and all the different policies and procedures, I want to thank Tracy, the administration, for the guidance to get through this. It's been very difficult. I'd be saddened if I didn't say or forget to thank the trainers too. Eric Sand, along with Tara Bish, have done a really good job. They've had to jump through every hoop, and if I hear MDH and CDC anymore, I'll be certainly happy if I don't have to deal with that anymore as we hopefully move through this. But they've done a great job to keep us moving forward. I think some campuses shut down. I think we found ways to continue to get guys on campus safely and follow the procedures, which fell down to even all the way down to our GMW group here. Sean Anderson over in Memorial was where we do a lot of our visits and just cleaning to make sure people are safe. So that took a lot of time. Thanks Alex Crew in the compliance office for helping out with signing day. Big thanks for the SID and Colin Boyle sitting in here. He's been a rock star for us and helps out with all the social media, which has been outstanding. The professor's taking out a lot of time, obviously doing on Zoom. It's been a different way to do it, but thank everybody for doing that and all the different virtual visits that we had to do just because of the change of times that really we couldn't have done it without everybody jumping on board. Certainly our coaches and players, can't thank you guys enough either for helping out. It takes an army to get this done. Every year you think about the man hours that go into recruiting it is a ton of man hours and just the amount of guys that or time that we put in to get our 23 commits. So I want to thank everybody. And then our community here in Bemidji makes everybody feel welcome. I think we hear that over and over again through our recruits of how they fit. And that's certainly a very big part of why we have the ability to retain our student athletes and they feel at home. I think it is a family atmosphere here in Bemidji, and I thank everybody for doing that. So as we move forward, as I normally do, I'm going to actually break this up into position groups. I'm going to start with the defensive guys first and then kind of move through it. I think with this class, we put a lot of focus on big skill athletes, and when I talk about big skill, I'm talking about the O-line and D-line. I think over half of our commits this year were either O-linemen and D-linemen. In the NSIC in particular, you're not going to win games unless you're good up front. That is a certainty for us. So we were certainly looking at building up those position groups and looking at it from that perspective. And then obviously filling out the class with the best skill guys that we possibly could get. So starting in the secondary, Michael Moore comes up from the Twin Cities. He went to Minneapolis Edison, very skilled player, was all-state, I believe, in baseball and football. Just a 6'2", 165-pound guy that played all over. He played quarterback, he played safety, we project him as a corner. Just a really, really good athlete, high competitive, really nice young man. So we're excited about having Michael up here and continue our strong play in the back half. It was a fun one. Tyler Shaver, his brother, is here on our current roster. Spencer Shaver comes up from Prior Lake. He's kind of a hybrid position for us. We call it our nickel, which is really a combination of a safety / linebacker. If you're familiar with BSU football, it's kind of the position like Gabe Ames has played over the year, been out in coverage, and certainly a big physical kid coming off the edge. But Tyler played running back in high school. He certainly played defense, was up at our summer camp, and just runs extremely well. Prior Lake had a great season down there, and we're excited about what he can do. So he's going to be a force off the edge and utilize his speed and his ability to cover guys in space. And then a familiar name coming back up from Elvin, Texas. We got another Olszewski coming back up. So Bo is coming up to join us from Elvin. He's going to be playing safety for us. I'm not making comparisons to his brothers, but I think he is a blend between the two. You certainly see on film just the way those and that family has played in the past. Flies around and throws his body into things and very physical and a little bit bigger. He's 5'11", 180. So we're excited about what Bo brings to the table, and we understand what their family's all about. And Gunner and certainly EJ before him coming up have done a tremendous job for us, both all conference players, and had a lot of accolades for both of them. So really excited about continuing that strong family tradition in the secondary. Really got two guys with connections. The next one we'll go to here is a linebacker. It's always fun when you get to talk about guys from Bemidji, getting those guys to stay in town. And Colton Heinrichs is about as good a fit as you can possibly get, not only just from on the field perspective of him being a very dynamic, multiple year all-conference guy, all-district, but he just fits for what we do. He can run in space, he's violent, he's just a really fun player to watch. He's very cerebral. And a guy that we had, been seeing play at the Chet for a long time. We're excited about keeping him here in town, and he's just a fit kid. He likes the outdoor recreational side of stuff. His family obviously is from around and got deep ties here, so we're really excited where Colton could continue to go and really continue our strong linebacker play here at Bemidji State. Moving into our interior D-line position, we have a couple guys on here that have, again, some ties, which I think is going to be a kind of a familiar theme. But Connor Zender was from Crosby Ironton. He's about 6 foot, 280 pound defensive tackle. He's been up here before. Coach Searstead at Crosby brings his team up to team camp. He obviously is a former BSU football player. He's an alumni, former D lineman here himself. So it's fun to be able to have him come back and get a player back up to us. So we're excited about Connor. He played O-line and D-line and did a really nice job. He moves well and a guy that we can hopefully plug up the interior with some just size and some brute strength in there. Caden Hagee is from Forest City, Iowa. Coach Labatt did a really nice job kind of getting some inroads down in the north part of Iowa for us. We have really looked at expanding our Midwest footprint, which you can probably see. We got some guys from Nebraska and Iowa on the roster now, along with Wisconsin and Minnesota. But Caden has ties as well. His dad actually grew up in Grand Rapids area, so he was excited to get back up here for the visit. And Caden was at our camp this summer. He's a big man. He's 6'3", 285 pounds. He's playing interior for us and just a big, strong physical kid, which I already said is very important for us as we have some graduating spots to fill in the near future, and just a kid that we expect to come in and compete at a high level. Then Coach Adams got us from Minneapolis North. Darnell McCray came up. Darnell is a guy that we probably identified as one of our top interior D linemen from the very get-go off his junior film when he was at Benilde. One of his former teammates is on the roster currently, one of his best friends. So Darnell just brings a skill set. If you watch him, he's very twitchy and bursty for a big man. We're extremely excited about having him on board. He's just a all-around great athlete, great human, great family. So we're excited about having him up. Moving on to the edge guys on the defensive line, we had Chris Ewing from Chanhassen. Coach Nelson has always produced a lot of good football players, a lot of guys signing today. But Chris is just a perfect fit. He likes the outdoor recreational. I think he probably picked Bemidji State based on what he could do, outside of football. But that certainly helps to keep guys here. But he's a heck of a good football player. He runs around. He has a great frame. He's 6'4", all of that, probably 230, 235 pounds. High motor, just again a quality young man, and really fits what we've had here. We're relating back to some of the great ones that have had those frames, and again we hope we can continue that play. Marcus Hansen is coming up from Waseca. He'll probably be projected at defensive end or maybe our buck or stand-up position. Kind of an oddity for Marcus. He was up for a finalist for Mr. Football in Minnesota. You don't have a lot of defensive linemen getting that honor, so certainly he did a lot of great things on film. But he's a compact, strong kid. He's 5'11", 235 pounds. Runs well. Just a great person. Again, strong in the academics in the classroom. So we're excited about his future, and he can play a few different spots. If he fills out a little bit more, he might be able to play interior, but we'll see how he evolves. To fill out the defensive line, the defensive end position, Luke Hessenauer comes from Milton, Wisconsin. Luke again came up early during the process. Again, a kid that on film can play probably interior along with the defensive end position. Probably just liked his motor, probably the most thing that popped off about him. So again, just building depth in there, just with the physicality of our own style of practices and the physicality that we have on our side of the ball is something that you have to have good D-line. So again, it was nice to stock the coverage there. Moving on over to the offensive side, we'll start with the fullback position, which I guess is an odd one. Maybe some guys won't start with fullbacks compared to maybe some of the more glamorous positions. But we got a young man from Norris, Nebraska. Coach Morris did a great job recruiting down there. We had a lot of quality young men. Coach Twarling down there has done a really nice job just developing a certain style and brand. But Dylan's a throwback. He plays with a linebacker mentality at fullback, and honestly, he probably could play linebacker in college, but it's just one of these old dude's just going to smack you in the face, the old snot bubbler type of guy. And I can't wait to get him up here. I think he's going to be a perfect fit. He loves the outdoor recreational side of stuff, big hunter fisher guy, and just really perfect fit for what we do on offense. So hopefully he can, build off of what we've done. We've had a lot of great fullbacks, Matt Gross being the last one, so hopefully you can continue those. Those are big shoes to fill. Moving on to the offensive line, which was the biggest group. I've been for years saying that we're going to build the depth. That sometimes, you think you got it, and then it kind of dwindles down. But we've been really putting a heavy emphasis to fill out that room and get it to a certain number, so we're able to do that this year. Starting with Bill Catola, he's from Mounds View. Bill was up at our camp. Bill has certainly done a really nice job transforming himself into a Division II athlete. Bill's transformed me seriously. He's probably lost 30 or 40 pounds between, over COVID, which I would have done that, kind of going the wrong way. But I tell you what, he's an awesome young man. I think he had like a 35 ACT. He's a really, really smart guy. His family connection up on the Iron Range, so it's really a good fit for him. And we're excited about Bill. Like, he could play inside, probably center. He played in high school. He could probably play guard, possibly tackle. Plays with a little nastiness to him, which I enjoy. So we're excited about having him. We got the next guy on the offensive line is a true center, Shane Atz from Roseville down in the Twin Cities. Again, he was up at our camp this summer, guy that we were able to get our eyes on, and just did a really nice job. And I think it's unique on the offensive line. You really can't take a guard or a tackle and say, hey, go snap the ball. We tried that once here, it didn't really work so hot. So it's a very unique skill set. So him and Bill will come in and have the ability to snap and have done it through high school. Next on the list here is Quincy Maben from Farmington down in the Twin Cities. Just a really good frame on Quincy, a very bendy, a guy that moves well for his size. Again, a kid that's lost weight and kind of transformed his body as well. Something as Coach Olson really put emphasis on while he was here, just looking at big athletes. And it's kind of, sometimes we don't term, big skills or big athletes, but that's what they are. They need to be able to bend, they need to be able to move, and Quincy can do that. So we're excited about having him on the interior. Tristan Benjamin from Webster, Wisconsin is our next offensive lineman. Tristan was a guy that we kind of got on late a little bit in the process, and he came over towards the tail end, was one of the later guys that we got committed, but a perfect fit from northern Wisconsin. He fits the outdoor recreational, the footprint. He's an awesome guy. He's a great basketball player as well. And he is another one that was probably 300 some odd pounds, reduced down to be at 270, 265. And just looks like a different football player. So we're really excited. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Nick Nemi and some of those guys that have been really good football players for us in the past. One more guy from Iowa on the offensive line, so Zach Ott from Rockford, Iowa, which is just in the northern kind of quadrant, a little bit off of 35 if you're heading down towards the Des Moines area. And I've heard about this. I have a cousin that lives in the area, and he's been talking about this small town guy for a while. Now he finally became a senior, and they actually play against my hometown, little 8-man school, Tripola. So when I got to see it, kind of made me giggle seeing my old high school film out there, or high school stadium. But I tell you what, Zach is a gifted athlete for his size. He has great bend. He's violent. Certainly, I think he'll be able to handle the jump to play against Division II athletes coming from a smaller school. We've had a lot of success with 9-man in Minnesota, and the 8-man guy is no different for me. If they can bend, they can move. And he's a road grader, man. He plays with a little nastiness too. So Zach and his family are great fits, and excited about having him on board. The next one would be our next guy from Nebraska, Ariane Garcia. He's from Gretna, Wisconsin, and Coach Kale down there does a really good job. They've kicked out a lot of great athletes, with multiple different levels. And what really jumps out about Ariane is just his ability to move. He can get downfield. You see some screen game stuff. He's throttling guys up front on the D-line and O-line. Just a fun prospect. Probably will, with his size, probably be more of an interior fit for us. He's played on the edge, which is intriguing for us as well. So we'll see how those pieces of the puzzle move together as we get through it. And then the last guy on the offensive line is Isaac Hagstrom from Annandale, true tackle body, a guy that we identified it early, 6'5", probably 260, 265. Looks like he's 190 pounds, really. He's just got a really nice frame on him, and probably a different type of body than we've had in the past on the offensive line there with his length. So we're excited about him. I expect a lot of great things, and he did a great job on film. And Coach Walters down in Annandale has produced a lot of great players, so can't wait to get him up here. Moving over to running backs on the offensive side, we end up taking two. We got, again, a little bit local flavor with Will Faldorf. Obviously, just being at the high school is one thing, but Will's dad and grandpa also played at BSU, so you got a long line of tradition to come and playing in the green and white down at the Chet. And Will's a dynamic player. He ran as well as anybody at our football camp here at Bemidji State during the summer, which we were able to do and knock it out through the COVID policies. But Will's a competitive guy. He lives in the weight room. I think his days, I know he's a great football player in high school, but I think his better days are even coming once he gets into a college system. Coach Stoffel does a great job out there. Troy did a great job with him beforehand. But again, it'd be interesting to kind of get him out of the triple option scheme and get him back into more zone-oriented stuff, or maybe some gap scheme stuff. It'd be fun to see what really Will can do over there. So again, he's got a lot of true natural ability over there at that spot. The next young man is from St. Michael Albertville. Coach Essler down there has really had a powerhouse kind of up and running for a long time. But David Collins is the other running back we took in this group, and David is phenomenal. If you watch him, he kind of has a blend of Jalen Fry and maybe a little bit bigger backs that we've had with Lakowski with his balance and vision. They run a little bit more gap scheme, which I'm talking like power instead of zone, which we do here. So again, I couldn't be happier with the two guys that we got in. Those were the guys that we early offered, and both of those guys committed. Which was outstanding. So obviously with our system, we got to have guys that can catch it out of the backfield and have a blend of power and speed, which both those guys have. The next group that we'll hit real quick here as we kind of wrap things up is going to be the receiver group. So we'll first kind of kick back over to Wisconsin. We have Alex Current, played over at Muskego High School for Coach Krause. And the weird thing is, everybody's like, well, why are you releasing him as an inside receiver? He won the award for the best high school running back in the state of Wisconsin. I think they call it the Crazy Leg Hirsch Award. And again, it was something that he wanted to play, number one. He certainly could probably play receiver, running back. He probably could play DB or corner or safety if he wanted. But the kid can fly, so we're going to play him at slot. I think that is a great position for him. And again, just balances out with what we're doing, and we can get, like we've used Malik, getting some jet sweeps, and he's going to have to touch the ball. He's a dynamic player when he gets it to him. Next guy, another Wisconsin player, is Drayton Lehman. And Drayton has put up ridiculous stats this year, and certainly through COVID is kind of hard to kind of put in perspective. But he's at over 1,000 yards, and again, he just makes a ton of plays. He was at our camp. Just a fun kid to watch and run around. Probably like Lundy's that we've had in the past, some of those guys that are workhorses over the middle, and really just twitchy player that is a mismatch for linebackers or safeties in space. So it'd be fun to see what Drayton brings to the table, and he's been a really, really good one in high school. Last but not least, probably a kid that we identified again during camps. It seems like we've recruited him for 5 years instead of just the last year and a half, was Cameron Abrams from Blue Earth. So Coach K's obviously had a really nice program down at Blue Earth. But Cameron, if you want to watch something fun, go watch his highlights for basketball, dunking over people. He makes it look really easy. He makes it look really easy in football. So another Mr. Football finalist here in the state of Minnesota. Big play outside receiver player for us. Kind of be in the wings to be able to take over things as we go through with Bolio leaving the program or graduating here sooner than later, and some of those other names that will be popping up as they get to the seniors. But a kid that can come in and compete right away. In my opinion, he's as good as anybody, and really all those skill guys are good enough to do it and come in and give us some depth as we move through. So that is the group, a little bit smaller group than what we probably had in the past. I think we ended up with 23, which maybe in a couple more than I thought we would take this year, given the protocols with the NCAA, bringing back to the table. But an outstanding group. They're strong in the classroom. They're great fits for Bemidji State and the community. So we're excited to get up here. And so with that, I'll turn it over for any questions.
Brent, with the NCAA saying everyone gets a free year, you maybe don't know yet how many guys are going to take advantage of that, with a lot of high schools not playing at all. If they did play, a lot of them didn't play a full season. How did all that stuff kind of impact what you ended up with today?
I think the NCAA part, when it came out, was something that we addressed right away. So, I do want to thank our seniors first. We had, all of our seniors but two elected to come back. I gave everybody the opportunity to do that. I was talking to Lakeland the other day too about it. I'm like, they deserve that. If they want to come back and they can enhance their portfolio or get another degree or major or minor, I mean, I want those guys to come back. They've done so much for Bemidji State, so much for me and so much for the program. You got to be able to do it the right way. So we had two guys that stepped away. And since I'm on the topic, I want to thank those two guys. Lucas Garby and Nick Johnson were the two guys that stepped away from the program and moved on to their professional careers. So they've given a lot back, and I want to send those guys off. We'll do something for them in the spring and maybe for senior day too. But what we did is I just sat down and talked to everybody on the roster. We talked to the juniors and seniors first and kind of trickled down about, hey, are you going to take the extension? Are you going to come back? As you get kind of down to the freshmen and redshirt freshmen, I think that conversation needs to happen a little bit further down the road. So that's how I did it. And I think it's going to take a couple years, Schultze, before we really know how the classes all merge together. But I would hope in the next 2 or 3 years, probably 3 years, we'll be back to normal in terms of the recruiting cycle. So, but honestly, the crazy part for the recruiting this year is that the Division I schools had dead periods. So we had like probably close to 400 student athletes on campus. Truly the first year I felt like we were ahead of like NDSU in that regard. I mean, obviously they got other mechanisms, but we got to see them and work with them, and which is such a big advantage. So that was really made it nice, identify guys and try to give them enough time to make a proper decision. So that part was good. It just seemed like it was a really long time without having a fall, that's for sure.
Yeah, Coach, it's kind of fun to poke at the Olszewski connection, like you mentioned. Bo, I know you said has some maybe similarities to EJ and Gunnar, but then maybe something different. Can you just touch on that a little bit more about what he might have similar to his two older brothers, but then what he brings to the table that might be a little bit different?
Well, I think he's a blend between the two. I mean, I think EJ was a little bit bigger when he got here than certainly Gunnar was. I think he was probably 155 pounds. I think Bo's legitimately probably 180, 185 or 180 range. So I think he just brings a little bit larger size to him. But all of them play the same way. They're just reckless with their bodies and go slam it up in there. I freaking love it. It's awesome to watch kids do that. So kudos to the parents and family for getting them geared that way. But I mean, beyond that, it's really hard to say, oh, he's the same as Gunnar. I mean, that's pretty hard, a guy that's playing for the Patriots. But certainly there's some genetics in there that obviously he has. But I mean, I think the biggest part is just his personality, kind of a blend between the two as well. He's a good academic student, which is great. I mean, that's always great to have. So as I, obviously talked to Gunnar back in the day, and obviously EJ, even the family, it's like he's just a blend. He has certain characteristics from EJ and Gunnar. So when you hear that, I'm like, hey, both were all NSIC players. You got another guy who was a All-American for us. So it's a pretty good blend to have.
Coach, was there one position that you were really targeting that you really had at the top of your list for guys you wanted to make some additions for?
Yeah, I think the position groups that we went in knowing that we were going to take bigger amounts was going to be the O-line and defensive line. That was something that, we have 110 guys on our roster. That's what we have here through, that's what we're set at. And you look at a lot of times that we might only start with 18, which sounds like a huge number, right? But say you got 18 offensive linemen, but 5 of them are out on the field. Well, that's only a 3.5 deep. I think you got to be a 4 deep. Like sometimes at certain positions we have a 5 and 6 deep. So, I mean, those guys are probably the most violent position groups in the game. They get rolled up on. So for us, it was just making sure that we could continue the strong play that we've had in those groups, and then, knock on wood. Like, I mean, you look back for the last couple of years, like Joe Woods missed multiple games. You had Nick Nemi miss multiple games. You look at center, James Hoovey, we had to replace him with a true freshman with Jake Gannon, who's a great player. They're all really good players that have come up underneath of them. But it's like, oh boy, what happens if we have one more? Which here at Bemidji State, knock on wood, we've had a couple riddled years. Hopefully they stop. But you know what? We just need that more depth. So I think we're able to absorb it at other positions, to be honest with you, a little bit better. And on the offense and defensive line, it always made me nervous. So I think it was just the ability of this year to balance out that O-line and D-line group.
Brent, as you've been here now for a number of years as the head coach, not that recruiting's ever easy, but does it get easier just kind of fulfilling your philosophy on how you want to recruit your team?
Certainly. And I'll be honest with you, is when I first got up here, under Jeff or Coach Tesh, and just I felt like Bemidji wasn't identified, not even in the Twin Cities per se. You know, you had other schools. St. Cloud had a good team. You had other obstacles to get guys up here. I just think now in our society and now where we're at with the times, like going 3.5 hours isn't a big deal to kids, and we get them up here, and maybe we just recruit the Twin Cities harder. We have multiple coaches in there. So I think it just seems like, for me personally, our brand is out there more. Maybe social media platforms has helped that too. And you win. Like, winning obviously cures a lot of stuff. But because we win, I think that's just because of the type of kids we're being able to get in here. So, yeah, this group of kids that we have on this list, as we tier things out, I mean, they were all towards the top of our list of guys that we evaluated and got to see. I wouldn't lie to you and say we got them all. That's false. But we feel really good about this group. They're just quality people. And you couple that with our coaches going out and making sure they're, got good families and things that are going to help. It doesn't matter if they're two family or two parents or somebody that has guided them and has some type of, values and beliefs that are similar to what we have here. The grind, the axe, the blue collar, doing things the right way. And I think by doing that, it all comes back to having, we had 110 guys start the fall. We have 107 guys right now through all of this stuff. We don't lose very many guys, and by the time they stay here for 4 or 5 years, the senior class will be 6 years, you win. And I think that's a byproduct. And then the culture, doesn't always have to just be preached by the coach. It's reciprocated, and the kids get it, and they're the ones that are selling your program. And our kids do a phenomenal job. Like, that was my biggest worry about our recruitment this year, is that because of COVID, we couldn't have our players, go hang out and go to a hockey game or basketball game, things, just have that college experience. And that was my one apprehension, is that they wouldn't get to feel that community and family bond. But we're able to do it in different ways, a lot of virtual stuff. But it has gotten easier, Schulte. It's always nice when you're getting calls from really good players that want to come to Bemidji State. So that comes back to what we've been able to do and all the alumni and the support that we've had.
Brent, obviously the running game, really a big part of Bemidji State, always has been. Everyone around here knows what Will Fuldorf can do, but David Collins, obviously, I remember hearing a lot of talk about how good of a talent he was down there, and All-State, obviously, first team. Just talk about, a little bit more in depth about how he really fits with the program, and how big of a get was to get a guy like David Collins.
Yeah, and I'll say both of those guys. I mean, Will Fuldorf's a really, really good football player in his own right. They're just different how they run, and it's a little bit different offensive schemes. But, starting with David, I mean, he's just got extraordinarily great balance, and that's something that you see his highlight video. I mean, how many times he spin out of a tackle, put his arm down, and bust one for 65 yards. So running those power schemes like they do in high school. And to be honest with you, St. Michael Albertville football is very similar to Bemidji State with what they run and kind of the attitude that they have. So getting a guy like David to come up here, and it was a guy that, we certainly identified very, very early with the recruitment process. I think he was up here he might have been up here for the first weekend for the official visits. So yeah, he was a guy that we identified, and I think everybody in the Metro knows who he is and knows that he selected Bemidji State too. So that's awesome to get that notoriety. But yeah, he's a special talent running around back there.
You mentioned the rash of injuries that you've seen on both O&D lines over the years. Well, last season that you guys played, you certainly had a rash of injuries at quarterback. There's no quarterbacks on this list. Was that by design, or just kind of how things played out?
It's always kind of a give and take on what we're looking at. I think we identify the traits that we want in a quarterback. We certainly had some offers out to quarterbacks, but in this class, you're just not going to take a kid either, just to say we got one. If we come back in on anybody later, that might be a position that we address, and you're certainly right. It seems like maybe we should take 3 or 4 a year. Maybe that might be an overstatement, but that is something that we talked about. But we do feel pretty good about the guys that we have in-house as well. And with the COVID year, it certainly gives you a different staggering of how it's going to play out. And also maybe tells you specifically how we feel about maybe one of the guys coming up through the program too. So we got some development there. But yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to taking one late. But right now, we're pretty happy with what we have in terms of what we have on the current roster.
I've read a about how there are some NSIC teams who are planning on playing a few exhibition games, or scrimmages, whatever you want to call them, this spring. Don't get how you think this spring will shape up for BSU?
We're planning on playing some right now. We have 3 scheduled, and 3 weekends, I should say. So throughout the month of April, we will be doing some. They will be neutral site, so I don't know if fans will be allowed. It's more like a joint practice, like the NFL joint practice. So we have a couple weekends where we're trying to make sure, like we still got hoops to jump through, to be honest with you, but tentatively placed. We've talked about it with our guys. And even some of those joint practices, there'll be 4 teams, and you kind of alternate teams, midway through the day. So really competition-wise, we would get at least a look at maybe 5 different teams in the spring, which would be great. And then with our ability, because we had our championship segment pushed to the spring, so we have a lot more time to work with our current players. So our spring game will actually be moved back to May 1st. So that'd be nice, so we can have it on a weekend. And then, so our guys at least will have, we're treating April essentially as a true in-season. So our guys will get that 4-week understanding of what the fall will come back to. And geared a lot towards our underclassmen at that point. I don't think our senior group and junior group that's playing a lot of football needs to be out there banging around. But that should scratch the itch a little bit in terms of getting some competition, which they need. They've been, heck, guys, we go play kickball and we almost have fights there. I mean, whatever. We could play hopscotch and something would happen where these guys are going to be competing. So they need it. They need to go out and do it and play the game.
Is that a concern, Brent, of some of the guys that are coming in that maybe didn't get much of a season this past fall, that if they redshirt, then they're going almost 2 years without really playing?
Yeah, it's certainly a concern for a lot of guys. We don't have, or really have had with this current group of guys that we signed, most of them played the vast majority, at least 2/3 of their season. So probably not as big an issue, but you look at teams that maybe dabble in Illinois that didn't get to play anything. There's certain parts of Wisconsin that didn't get to play at all. I think some of those kids, unfortunately, some of them maybe just got passed over because they didn't have senior film. I think there's going to be a strong trickle down of kids this year in particular, because there's smaller class sizes for the most part, trickling down through FCS through Division II. I think there's going to be a lot of good players that trickle down into even lower levels, NAI, D3, maybe some lower levels, even D2s that maybe haven't had as much success. I haven't really looked at the signing date class yet. I'll be interested. You're going to probably have some teams that take 60 guys because they're like, hey, we're starting over. And I'm sure there's going to be teams that only take 10 or 12 because they had their senior classes coming back. So every coach is doing a little bit different in each program, but I think you're right. You're spot on. It's a long layoff, but we kind of sell it as a good thing and transform your body, get yourself mentally prepared, and then tear the Band-Aid off and get back to work.
Brent, this might be way too early, and even more now way too early because of what COVID and all that. But with the guys that you brought in, is there any specific guys that because of the positioning you guys have in front of them, or maybe might have a shot to get on the field or get an opportunity to play, even maybe just special teams? Any specifics with the layout you have of your roster?
I think I haven't really looked at it that far. I think the big thing that if we've had underclassmen play, it's typically been skill positions, and I think just naturally that happens in football. I could certainly see the running back group, Cam Anderson at receiver, Alex Curran at receiver, both like physically gifted enough to go out and play in the NSIC as a freshman. David Collins is a no-brainer if he was needed to, or if he was ready to. And sometimes it's not always physical, right? It's more mentally getting. It's a hard transition from high school when mom and dad or whoever is there kind of pushing you along or maybe taking care of you. This is you're on your own, and to come in as a 18-year-old or maybe 19 is to do everything on your own now, play college football season plus academics. So some of it's just a maturity level if they can mentally handle it. But there's a lot of guys on this list, probably even on the O-line and D-line more than ever this year, that have the physical attributes to go do it. In a perfect world, I'd love to redshirt them all so they can be 22 instead of 18, but we'll see as it goes. I think there's always guys that just come in here and knock it out of the ballpark. It surely wouldn't surprise me if Bo, comes in and competes, just knowing how his brothers have done it, coming in. But it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting fall to figure that out.